We welcome you back to Bird's Eye View. We are on location at the Leon Monclaw Indoor Practice Facility. Happy to have with us the new Director of Intercollegiate Athletics at the University of Louisiana. What a long title that is. Dr. Bryan Maggard is here. The last 10 days, I guess, been pretty crazy, have they not?
Pretty crazy, but a lot of fun. You know, the screening committee, Dr. Savoie, the entire group have done a really, really nice job with the process. And so for those of us who were involved in it, it was very smooth, you know, very clear and concise and efficient. So, you know, you had the stress of the activities and, you know, worrying or wondering if you're going to make the next round, so to speak. But all in all, a great process, a great experience, and we're glad we're where we are today. You
were at the University of Missouri for 21 years and worked under Mike Alden. I think most folks know that. A couple of questions about your time at Mizzou, and the first one is, why was the timing right now?
Good question, and I have a good answer for that. So, you know, Carrie, my wife, and I knew that the time would come where we were going to be ready to start a new chapter, and that new chapter would probably take us away from Columbia. And the factor for that new time was our youngest daughter graduating from high school. It was important to us after we got to a certain point to try to get all of our kids raised in one setting, in one area. And so in my business, that's not overly common. So we've been very blessed to be able to move up, you know, 4 different positions, if you will, in one location and not have to move around. So
why this?
About to become empty nesters was the catalyst for us being able to make this.
Why this place?
You know, we looked at, and I say that because Carrie and I looked at this together. It was important because we knew wherever we're going, we're not nomadic people. We don't like to move around. And so it was important for us to identify a community, a opportunity where we could see ourselves living for quite some time. And so, at least in my industry, there are 4 things that I always thought I would look at and I knew I would look at, you know, in considering a particular athletic director job. The first is the leadership. You know, who I'm reporting to and working with has to understand the role of athletics, and they have to, be supportive of. Dr. Savoie is that. That's number 1. 2, we looked at the institution as a whole, right? We knew that the institution is bigger than the athletic department, and so we wanted to make sure that we were joining a university family that has a good academic reputation, great public education provider, and strong, having strong academic programs. So check the box there for the University of Louisiana. 3rd, the athletic program. The Ragin Cajuns are a fantastic brand, I'm telling you. You may know that already, but from the outside coming in, this is a big-time job in our industry. People know that. And then finally, and the successes, that you've had athletically, and you do things right academically and all that good stuff. And then finally, the community. Lafayette, when we got here last week for our first visit, as we were one of 2 finalists, we fell in love with it. And that, it didn't have to, seal the deal, but it absolutely did. It was so easy.
Someone said to me recently, talking about this job, this athletic department, this athletic program, and to an extent this university, the folks that have the worst impression of us is us. That people who look at it from the outside see something totally different. I want to go back to the 3rd thing that you said and talk about what a good job this is. What makes it so good?
Well, first and foremost, this job is perceived as athletically, competitively being very successful. And I'm not saying that's what you should look at necessarily, but from the outside looking in, so as an example, I oversaw football scheduling at Missouri. And the University of Louisiana, the Ragin Cajuns, were on the do not schedule list. You don't schedule those guys. And with the history of and success of baseball and softball and other programs, it's just competitively, this place is really good, really good. And then the recent commitment to facility upgrades, that's a big part of why, an athletic department, I think, can make a name for itself. And then just that Ragin Cajun brand. People from the outside looking in, they know that the fan base is passionate, They know that people really care about their sport program. So to your earlier point, often we can't see the forest for the trees, right, when we're in the thick of it. And I don't think that's not unique here. I will tell you that. It's not unique here. I think that's indicative of a lot of places. But perceptionally, and it's not just perception, there's legitimacy to this, is this place has a lot going for it.
You worked with Mike Alden. Not only did you work with him, you worked with him for a long time. And you were seated at the right hand for many of those years. His consulting firm came in a little over a year ago and did an evaluation of the athletic program. Some of that was made public. I think some of it was not. How much of a head start does that give you, knowing Mike Alden, having the trust in him that you have, and having a blueprint that says, okay, here's what needs to be done, go get it?
So during the interview process, I kept using the phrase cheat sheet. The next athletic director at UL gets a cheat sheet. Now, the fact that I know Mike as well as I do, and not just Mike, but the individuals that he put together on this review team, I know for sure that those issues were well vetted, and they were developed from a really thorough and knowledgeable research. And so it is hugely, hugely advantageous. And it will absolutely give myself an opportunity to, really start looking, okay, the biggest challenge will be prioritizing. What do we need to start knocking off the list? But that's a good problem to have.
That is a good problem to have, and it's also going to depend on who you talk to.
No question.
One of the things that gets brought up all the time, I've gotten it on my radio show for years. I've gotten it with running into other people, just talking with fans over the 25 years that I've been affiliated with doing Cajun broadcasts, is folks have been asking, just ironically, we've been in the Sun Belt Conference 25 years. And Jay, when are we going to get another league? When are we going to get another league? Now, I'm not going to ask you that question because I don't think you have the answer to that. But I will ask this. You were part of an organization that had to make a transition from one league to another. In your case, from the Big 12 to the Southeastern Conference. Being able to get an invitation to the league is one thing. Being able to make the transition is another. You've gone ahead and had the experience in making the transition. Until there's an opening somewhere, you can't force your way into another league, but what can you do in the meantime to where if somewhere down the road an opening comes up in another league that you and Dr. Savoie feel is advantageous to this athletic department, what can you do to have the university in the proper position to A, get an invitation, and B, want to say yes?
There could be multiple things that a particular conference might look at, but speaking high level, I would tell you that, one, you need to have the proper infrastructure in place, and that could come in the form of facilities. It could come in the form of staff and personnel, sport teams. Showing consistent success athletically will be important. But it's not just athletics. I know, particularly with the SEC transition, a big draw to the SEC was the AAU status of the University of Missouri. And that's something that we had, and only so many schools have that. And so that played a big role in it too. So there are these, what I call infrastructure pieces that, you have to make sure that you have in place. I'm a big believer of process. And if you have a process in place and it's a good process, the outcomes will be positive. So rather than just, saying the end goal is getting here or there from a conference standpoint, let's do the things that we know we need to do regardless to improve the program, to make sure that our student athletes are having the best experience and that we're very competitively or successful competitively. We're winning on a consistent level. Do those things and opportunities, will present themselves. And so, but to your point, you're right. It's kind of like being asked to the prom. You might want to go to the prom, but if there's nobody out there asking you to go, you may not end up going. So what can we do to position ourselves to just be successful? Focus on being successful where we are today. And it doesn't mean that we don't aspire, to potentially, look at opportunities. But you said it perfectly. You have to position yourselves to get the opportunity, because we can want to all we want, but there's got to be a reciprocated feeling to that.
You talked about infrastructure, and you mentioned athletic facilities. Well, softball's got a real nice one. Cajun Dome just finished a $21 million renovation. There's a little bit of construction going on, just about a stone's throw from here that I think when it's done, folks are going to be very, very excited about. But the next phase, according to the facilities master plan, is the football facility. That's going to cost a lot of money. A lot of money. We found out that an $18 million renovation to Russo Park and Teague Moore Field is a lot of money. When we start talking about this one, that's going to be a lot of money.
No question. But there's also no question that needs to be addressed, right? And so I think all the candidates knew that project, getting it to be a priority and finding opportunities to finance that will be a key initiative. But you're right, it's going to take support. It really is. It's going to take, I think, an athletic director and an entire team of people to be engaging, to be visible. But we have to develop a vision, right? We have to then cast that vision and sell that to the hearts and minds, of our supporters to make that happen, no doubt.
You said that you were responsible for football scheduling when you were at the University of Missouri, and at the University of Louisiana was on the do not schedule list. I think that there are some folks that are listening this afternoon that might be a little surprised by that. Okay, so now you have to do football scheduling for the school that's on the do not schedule list. So now that you've put them on the list, how do you get them off the list?
I'm not sure I have the answer to that right now. Obviously, what I don't know is, what schools would not consider, playing us. I will tell you this, I look forward to the relationships I have with soon-to-be former counterparts within the Power Five and talking to them about opportunities. On one hand, it's a compliment, right, to be on that list. On the other hand, it makes it challenging because if people don't want to pay you, then how do you get those games? I've been on that other side, so I've watched people on this side, how they go about scheduling, and absolutely, this is hard. This is hard to do, but we will certainly look into, trying to get home-and-home contests with Power 5 schools. And some will be more susceptible to doing that than others, but I have a pretty good feel who we might have a chance to do that with. No guarantees, but we'll always look at that, and then we'll certainly do the best we can to put a schedule together that excites our fan base. But at the same time, I will always make sure I have the input of the head football coach, on that.
Well, he gave a little input earlier today. He when he had his press conference talking about the signees. Somebody said, look, we know you haven't had a chance to talk to Dr. Maggard yet a whole lot, but what about scheduling? And he said, well, let me tell you what I don't want. I don't want just 5 home games, which is what you happen to have in 2017. He said, I'd always like to have 6 home games. In fact, I'd like to work toward getting 7. So, okay, now you know what your head coach wants. Right. It is football scheduling. The last 3 athletic directors said to me it was the hardest part of their job. You're nodding your head. Was it the hardest part of your job over there?
I don't know if I would call it the hardest part, but it was challenging. But I'm probably a little bit of an odd duck in the sense that I enjoyed that responsibility. For me, it was kind of like putting a puzzle together, and I enjoyed the communication with other institutions and athletic programs. I enjoyed strategizing on trying to put together the best schedule that will allow our football program to have success. And there is a strategy to it. But it can be very frustrating because you think, you've got somebody lined up, and all of a sudden, a higher bidder comes in, for example. And so in an odd way, I enjoyed that, but I can absolutely support the mentality of those before me who did that job, that it could be easily perceived as the most challenging responsibility.
You and I met for about 1 minute earlier today, and we were talking about you coming over here, and you said, be easy on me. I almost cried up there. And I said, no, you did cry up there. I said, and furthermore, you made the rest of your family cry. And somebody called me not long afterwards and said to me, well, how did it go? And I said, well, he made his family cry. And they said, well, was that a good thing? I said, well, you'd have to ask them, but I think it's okay. When you start talking about, look, it's one thing to have a career. It's one thing to have a good job. It's one thing. It's another thing to sit down and say, hey, honey, how do you feel about Louisiana? Obviously, she said, oh, okay. But I'm curious about the kids, because one of them is a grad student, one of them is an undergrad, one of them is a senior in high school. What was their reaction when you said, guys, just let me tell you what's going on here right now?
There was certainly, I think, some surprise. Not so much in the fact that they knew that this time was going to happen, but just when it did. No timing is never perfect, right? And in our industry, these jobs open up about this time of year, and a lot of times, it happens that in the perfect world, I would have loved to have, stayed in Columbia and see my youngest get through her senior year.
Right.
But the fact that, I'm going to have to step out a few months ahead of that, that just kind of comes with the territory, and that was out of our control. So that was probably the part that maybe got her the most. They knew that time was going to come. It's just
yeah. But you said no. I will come to your graduation.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. She's an accomplished dancer, and this is her final go around, and she'll go off to school somewhere and major in dance performance and hopefully dance professionally afterwards. So we won't know until the end of March, early April, where she'll end up. But she's got a few events from a dance perspective that I will get back to, because it's the last ones, right? And then obviously high school graduation.
Let me ask you about the other two. What are the fields that they're interested in?
So my son, who is 21, he already has his undergraduate degree from the Berklee College of Music in Boston. And he is a jazz pianist, but he got a degree in music business management. So I think, when the opportunity presents itself, he would love to break into the artist rep field. He is currently, though, is in grad school at the University of Missouri in a education, school, and counseling psych program that you might think, well, what does that have to do with music? But it's a field, kind of like positive psychology, you can absolutely apply to anything you do. So he has an assistantship, and that's covering his school and tuition and stipend, all that good stuff. Our middle child, Aubrey, is a sophomore at Mizzou. She's pretty entrenched. She's a member of the Mizzou Golden Girl team and a sophomore there. So, they've made their niche already. They're obviously from Columbia, so it's not like, when we leave them that they're being left to strangers. That's home for them, right? But they're excited about this. I know they are, and I was so happy, that they got to participate in these series of events, because that helps them see, this is where mom and dad are going to, and they're excited for me, for us, and I could not ask for any more.
I gotta ask you about your background educationally, because you got a bachelor's degree in journalism, then you got a master's degree in health and physical education, then you got a PhD in psychology. What is up with you?
Exactly. I'm never satisfied, obviously, right? I'm trying to fill the void. No, probably no different than a lot of people. I started out in journalism and mass communications as an undergrad.
Because you wanted to be me.
Absolutely. Actually, my emphasis is in advertising.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
And by about my senior year, I knew that's not what I wanted to do. But I wasn't going to change my major to extend schooling. And I worked as a student equipment manager for the K-State football team from 86 to 89, back when Kansas State could not buy a win in football, literally. And but that got my appetite wet to work in the sports industry. And at that time, I thought I'd love to work in the front office of a professional sports team. I graduate. My boss at the time lines me up with a 8-week preseason internship with the Washington Redskins. So I shoot out to Carlisle, Pennsylvania, just to take advantage of the opportunity to talk to their front office people. They all said wholeheartedly, go back and get your master's. So I did that. That was right at the time where Carrie and I started dating. She was a year behind me in school, and she had another year to go undergrad. And so got a master's in health and physical education with an emphasis in athletic administration. One thing leads to another. I do a 3-hour practicum course with the K-State Athletic Department a staff member leaves as the academic advisor for the football team to take another job, in essence, they said, hey, intern, fill the gap until we hire somebody full-time. And I always tell people, I'm convinced that between me doing a good enough job in that role and them knowing they could get me really cheap, they offered me the full-time job. $18,000 a year, more money than I'd ever seen in my life. And it provided me a great opportunity. And I really credit their head football coach, Bill Snyder, for really giving me the start, because he supported my full-time candidacy. And 26 years later, I'm now sitting next to you as an athletic director.
Pretty incredible guy, Bill Snyder. I've interviewed him a couple of times, and there's only one person in my knowledge of sports that's ever had success at Kansas State, and it's him. And he retires, he comes back, he's doing it again, and doesn't look like he's going to slow down.
I know he loves what he's doing. I think he would, as long as he's able to, I think he's going to coach. And power to him. If you're passionate about what you're doing, then it's really not work, right? And so he's got a great thing going. He's so well revered there, And so it's fun to watch people who really enjoy what they're doing at that level for that long. I hope I'm that one day.
Well, you have time, because he's a little older than us.
A little bit. A little bit.
I want to ask you a question about staff. I know your staff. I know them better than you do. You're going to get to know them better than I do. But I'm talking specifically about numbers. This is not a very big athletic staff for an FBS program at any level. Did you and Dr. Savoie talk about that at all? And what can an athletic director do when he's trying to get a university the next step up? What can you do to facilitate things when you have a very small staff?
Well, as I told the staff today at our first staff meeting at 9:30, I said there are three things that I believe firmly in, and that's working hard, working smart, and having fun. And the working smart piece is important in my mind, because when you do have limited resources, you got to be really efficient with them. And I know this staff, everybody and their brother has told me how hardworking these people are. I don't doubt that at all. But I just wanted to make sure, are we focusing on the right things? We got to make sure that, I don't have plates too full. And if something needs to be taken off of a plate, how do we prioritize, what we want people to focus on? There may be situations where you can't take anything off, but, staff size, it's important, but what's more important are the people you have in those positions. And so I'm just looking forward to getting here, assessing. Actually, I'm going to meet with the senior staff tomorrow at 8 o'clock, and I've asked Jessica to bring the organizational chart, and so we can all sit down. And I just want to get a feel for how things are structured, because we might be able to make some improvements without spending a dime, just by simply making sure that we are prioritizing responsibilities and roles, and do we have the right people in the right positions.
When you say that be able to maximize things without spending any money, if T-Joe's listening, he's probably real happy to hear you say that right now.
Well, I certainly know the campus CFO is. But today's athletic director, I believe, can't have them, regardless of your level. I mean that. Can't just have this consume, spend mindset. I think today's athletic director has to have some business savvy. They have to be innovative, creative, and entrepreneurial. And, when your resources are limited, right, until you can start to grow them, you have to be those things. And, again, financial affairs, whether it's our home affairs or athletic department, I think these rules apply. You have to be efficient. You have to be effective. You have to be respectful and responsible with your resources. And if we're doing those things, and we have our vision, our mission, our core values in place, and our priorities, as I told the staff today, not that these will be the only two questions we ask when we're thinking about an expense, but what I want to get ingrained in everybody's head and thought process is, when we're thinking about an expense, does it check one of two or both boxes? One, will it enhance the student-athlete experience? Does it help us competitively, academically, socially? And two, will the spending of that dollar help us generate another dollar? So sometimes the old adage, you have to spend money to make money. There's truth to that, no question.
I talked with someone. We were just talking about philosophy back when it was made known that there was going to be a search for a new athletic director. And someone said to me, he said, you can go ahead and you can find a guy who's been managing a $10 million athletic budget and give him $22-23 million and let him think like he's won the jackpot. Or you can find a guy who's in an athletic department that's got a $70, $80, $100 million budget and let him look at it and say, okay, how can I take this $23 million and turn it into $70 million? He said my option is for the latter, and evidently that was Dr. Savoy's choice as well. And I think the committee's choice too, when you get right down to it with some of the folks that they spoke with. So there are obviously some steps that can be taken in pretty short order to generate more funds for the athletic department. When you start talking about generating big money, though, it's going to take an awful lot of an awful lot. Would you agree with that?
I agree. But, so what we're talking about there is fundraising. We're looking at how do we enhance our ticket sales. We're talking about multimedia right opportunities. Are we maximizing our apparel contracts? All those things, right? But to your point earlier about, if we're going to go build a new football press tower with a really, really big price tag, we're going to have to go out and raise some money. And what I'm not saying, I'm not minimizing the challenges of funding, but to me it comes down to one thing, and that's relationships. And as the athletic director, I have to be visible, I have to be engaged with our constituents and our stakeholders. And have genuine relationships with those people. So they trust me, they trust our university, our athletic department, not only give us money, but that we'll spend it, invest it wisely. And that's a part of, casting and selling a vision. And I look forward to building relationships. My kids and my wife have told me that I'm kind of like a guy I've never met, a stranger I didn't know. I have no problem.
If that's the case, you're going to fit in really well right here.
And so, I'm just looking forward to visiting with and really getting to know our supporters, our entire fan base. Whether you're somebody who buys a ticket and a box of popcorn at a game, or you are somebody who, provides a seven-figure gift, everyone is important. We have to have them all. We have to have them all. And what we know is we need more.
Dr. Bryan Maggard, Ragin Cajun Athletic Director. I look forward to visiting with you some more. I hope you'll drop by once you get settled in and visit with us on a regular basis. Continue to share the vision that you have and how we're going to get to the point where you want us to get. But thanks for coming by and visiting with us this afternoon, and hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and we will do it again many times.